The small downtown cafe was busy as it usually was on a Friday afternoon. The hum of conversation mixed with the clinking of cups and the occasional hiss of the espresso machine created a familiar rhythm that the waitstaff had grown used to. She moved through the tables with a tray in her hands, balancing plates of food and drinks with a practiced ease. Every so often, she offered a warm smile to a customer, trying to make them feel at home. Even when she was exhausted from the long hours. It had been a long week, and today felt even longer. The morning rush had been particularly intense, with more orders than usual and a shortage of staff to handle them. Despite the stress, she reminded herself that this job was a step toward something bigger. She had dreams that stretched far beyond the cafe, dreams that kept her going, even on days when it seemed like nothing would ever change. As she moved between the tables, her mind wandered to the small notebook she kept at home. Filled with ideas for her own little business someday, the thought gave her a quiet motivation, something to hold on to while dealing with the demands of customers who sometimes didn't appreciate the effort. Just as she was bringing a fresh pot of coffee to a table near the window, a group of men entered the cafe. They were dressed sharply, in suits that suggested wealth and power, and their confident strides made it clear that they were used to getting attention. They glanced around with casual arrogance, and she immediately noticed the way they looked her up and down. It wasn't unusual for customers to judge her or her coworkers, but something about the way these men carried themselves made it different. There was a coldness in their laughter, sharpness that cut through the usual friendly atmosphere of the cafe. They took a table near the center. It's the kind that made them impossible to ignore. As she approached with menus, one of them smirked and made a comment under his breath, loud enough for her to hear. It was a mocking remark about her uniform, the way she held her tray, the way she smiled too politely. Her heart sank for a moment, a familiar sting of embarrassment and frustration. She had learned to brush off such comments over the years, but it never got easier. There was something about mockery coming from people who clearly had every advantage in the world that made it feel sharper, more personal. She took a deep breath and forced a small, polite smile, trying to keep her voice steady as she handed them the menus. "Good afternoon, gentlemen. Can I get you started with some drinks while you decide on your order?" she asked, her tone calm despite the flutter of nerves in her stomach. One of them chuckled, a low, dismissive sound that made her want to shrink into herself. The others joined in, laughing at some joke she couldn't fully hear, but knew was at her expense. She looked away briefly, trying not to let them see how much it hurt. She reminded herself that she was good at her job, that she had handled worse situations before, and that this would pass as she went back to the counter to fill their drink order. She could feel their eyes on her, sharp and assessing. She worked quickly, pouring coffee and water, making sure each cup was clean and the presentation was correct. Her hands moved automatically, following the routines that had become second nature after years of practice. Even though her mind was aware of the ridicule she faced, her body moved with confidence and precision. She had learned that professionalism was the best shield against cruelty. And today, she clung to that lesson tightly when she returned with the drinks. One of the men made another comment, this time about the way she carried the tray. He smirked and nudged his friend, who laughed and added something about her looking like she was struggling with the weight. She felt her cheeks heat up, but forced herself to meet their eyes briefly, maintaining a polite smile. "Here are your drinks. Are you ready to order, or would you like a few more minutes?" she asked, keeping her voice neutral, steady, professional. Their laughter continued, though slightly quieter now, more contained, as if they were surprised by her composure. She took their orders efficiently, writing them down and repeating them back to make sure she got everything right. Each step of the process, each interaction, was a test of patience and restraint. And she passed it silently, without letting their behavior disturb her more than necessary. She reminded herself that this moment, uncomfortable as it was, would not define her or her future. It was just a test, and she had learned to endure tests like this before. Behind the counter, the barista noticed the tension and offered a sympathetic smile, a silent show of support that meant more than words could. It was a reminder that she wasn't alone, that others recognized the challenge she faced and respected the way she handled it. That small act of kindness strengthened her resolve, giving her a quiet sense of solidarity amidst the mockery. She returned to the table to deliver the food, making sure everything was correct and neatly arranged. Even as the men snickered quietly amongst themselves, she maintained her calm demeanor. Focusing on the task at hand rather than the unkind words, she moved to another table. Taking orders from regular customers who greeted her with familiar smiles, their friendly chatter was a welcome distraction, a reminder that not all interactions were difficult, that there were people who appreciated her work and valued her presence. It gave her a sense of balance, preventing the earlier encounter from completely overwhelming her. She knew that her day would continue with ups and downs, that some moments would test her patience, while others would bring small joys and affirmations. As the afternoon progressed, she went about her work methodically, refilling drinks, clearing tables, and taking orders with care. The group of men remained at their table, occasionally glancing around and whispering to each other. Their laughter was less frequent now, subdued perhaps by the realization that their behavior did not disturb her as much as they expected. She found a strange sense of satisfaction in this, a quiet victory that didn't require confrontation or retaliation. She had stayed composed, had maintained her professionalism, had not allowed them to shake her confidence. Outside the window, the sunlight shifted, casting warm patterns on the cafe floor. The bustle of the city continued unabated, indifferent to the small dramas inside the cafe. She took a brief moment to glance outside, drawing in a deep breath, feeling a small sense of calm amidst the chaos of the day. She reminded herself of why she worked so hard, of the dreams she held on to, and of the future she hoped to build. Each interaction, each challenge, was part of the journey, and she refused to let a few arrogant strangers derail her focus. And then she noticed a figure in the corner, someone she hadn't seen before. The person was seated quietly, observing the cafe with a calm, watchful eye. Unlike the group at the center, there was no mockery or ridicule here, only attention and awareness. It was a subtle but distinct difference, one she sensed immediately. Something about the presence was reassuring, as if the universe had placed a witness in the room, someone who could see more than the surface of things. She returned to her work, carrying the food to the tables, but the feeling of being observed in a respectful way gave her an unexpected boost of confidence. The rest of the afternoon unfolded with the usual rhythm of the cafe, but the earlier incident lingered in her mind. She replayed the laughter, the comments, and the looks. But she paired each memory with her own responses, calm, professional, unshaken. The contrast gave her a sense of control, a quiet empowerment. She realized that the way she handled herself mattered more than the opinions of people who chose to mock rather than stand. By the time the rush began to slow, she allowed herself a brief moment of rest behind the counter. Her hands were tired, her feet ached, but there was a sense of accomplishment in the small victories of the day. She had faced ridicule and remained composed, had served her customers with care, and had maintained her dignity. It was a lesson she carried forward, a reminder that no matter the circumstances, she could rely on her own strength and professionalism. As the cafe settled into a quieter evening, she began to clear the last of the tables and organize the counter for the night. The memory of the group of men was still there, but it was now tempered by the knowledge that she had not let them affect her in the way they intended. She had held her ground with quiet dignity, and that was more important than any acknowledgement from those who tried to belittle her. The day, challenging as it had been, had reinforced her belief in herself, in her abilities, and in the importance of maintaining grace under pressure. She had just returned to the counter, after serving the last of her tables, when she noticed him again, sitting quietly in the corner. He seemed to be watching more than just the customers. His eyes moved thoughtfully across the cafe, noticing small details that most people overlooked. He wasn't rushing anyone or making a show of himself, but there was a quiet authority in the way he carried himself. It wasn't intimidating in a harsh way, but it was impossible not to notice. She felt a small sense of relief seeing someone so calm, as if the day's stress had found a silent witness who could understand the balance between hard work and human behavior. The cafe had settled into a slower rhythm, the rush now replaced by a steady trickle of customers who moved at their own pace. She continued her work, taking orders and clearing tables, but there was a difference in her movement now. She walked a little taller, her confidence bolstered by the presence of someone who seemed genuinely observant rather than judgmental. She caught glimpses of him looking her way. Not in a way that made her uncomfortable, but in a way that suggested interest and awareness. He wasn't someone who laughed at her or made fun. He was someone who could see beyond the immediate, who understood the effort that went into her work. As she went to refill a glass of water at a table near the window, she overheard the men from earlier making more quiet comments. They had shifted their attention to other customers, but she could sense their lingering amusement aimed in her direction. Despite their whispers, she kept her focus on the tasks at hand. She reminded herself that she didn't need their approval or understanding to feel proud of her work. Every plate she balanced, every drink she poured, was a testament to her own skill and patience. It was easy to forget in moments like this that dignity was measured not by others' laughter, but by how one handled oneself in the face of it. She moved back toward the counter with a tray full of desserts, keeping her posture straight and her smile composed. When she passed the corner where he was sitting, he offered her a small, encouraging nod. It wasn't flashy or performative. It was simple and human, an acknowledgement of her effort that made her feel seen in a way she rarely experienced. She returned the nod, a brief exchange of recognition, and went about her work with renewed energy. It was remarkable how such a small gesture could lift her spirits, how the presence of someone who understood the quiet struggles of her day could make even the most tiring hours feel lighter. She went to check on the group of men, ensuring that their orders were correct. They hadn't become any kinder, their smirk still present, but she noticed that their laughter had grown less frequent. Perhaps they had realized that their attempts to undermine her composure were ineffective, or maybe they had grown bored. Either way, she felt a small sense of relief. Her professionalism was not just a shield, it was a subtle form of strength, one that didn't need to be loud or confrontational to work. She could continue to do her job with care and precision, and that alone would speak louder than any mocking words. As the afternoon sunlight shifted and streamed through the cafe windows, she began to notice small interactions that she usually missed. A customer who seemed frustrated with the wait softened when she spoke kindly. Another smiled genuinely when she made a small joke about the weather. These moments reminded her why she had chosen this job, not just as a paycheck, but as a way to connect with people, to make their day a little better, even when her own was hard. She realized that her attention to these details, her ability to see the humanity in each interaction, was what set her apart. It wasn't just about serving food. It was about serving people, and that distinction gave her a quiet pride. Meanwhile, the man in the corner continued to watch, occasionally jotting something in a small notebook. She didn't know what he was writing, and she wasn't sure she wanted to ask. But there was something about his presence that felt like a safety net. She could work through the remainder of her shift knowing that someone capable and discerning was observing. Someone who understood that her value wasn't determined by the laughter of strangers. She focused on her tasks, moving swiftly between tables, clearing dishes, and delivering orders with the same care she always did. The rhythm of her work became almost meditative, a flow that kept her mind engaged and her body moving efficiently. During a brief lull, she found herself standing at the counter, wiping down surfaces and organizing supplies. Her thoughts drifted to her dreams, to the bakery she hoped to start someday. The notebook she kept at home was filled with ideas, sketches of pastries, plans for the layout, and notes about costs and suppliers. She had been saving carefully, putting aside small amounts from each paycheck. She often imagined the day when she could turn her dream into reality. The presence of the man in the corner seemed to lend credibility to these thoughts, as if his silent observation was an unspoken recognition of her potential. It was strange, but comforting. The group of men eventually began to gather their belongings, preparing to leave. She delivered their final drinks and cleared their table with her usual professionalism, making no sign that their mockery had affected her. As they walked toward the door, she caught a final glimpse of their expressions, slightly confused, slightly frustrated. They hadn't expected her to remain composed. They hadn't anticipated that their laughter would fail to shake her. She felt a subtle satisfaction, not from revenge, but from knowing that she had maintained her dignity. It was a quiet victory, one that didn't require acknowledgement from them to matter. After they left, the atmosphere in the cafe seemed lighter. Other customers continued to enjoy their meals, and the staff moved with less tension. She returned to her routine, clearing tables, restocking supplies, and checking on remaining customers. The man in the corner had not left, and she felt a growing curiosity about him. Who was he? Why had he come to this cafe, and what had drawn his attention to her? She didn't allow herself to be distracted for long, focusing instead on the work she loved, but the questions lingered in her mind, planting seeds of intrigue as the day moved toward evening. She took a moment to step outside for a brief breath of fresh air. The city was alive with the sounds of traffic and distant conversations, a bustling backdrop to her own quiet thoughts. She inhaled deeply, letting the cool air fill her lungs, and reflected on the events of the day. Despite the ridicule she had faced, she had remained composed, had taken pride in her work, and had found unexpected encouragement in the presence of a silent observer. It was a day that tested her patience and resilience, and she had passed with quiet strength. Returning inside, she resumed her duties with renewed focus. The man in the corner was still there, and now she felt a subtle sense of connection, though they had never spoken. His observation seemed thoughtful, almost analytical, but never judgmental. It was a reminder that not everyone in the world measured worth by laughter or mockery. Some people noticed effort, dignity, and character in ways that were meaningful and affirming. She continued her work into the evening, balancing trays, taking orders, and engaging with customers in her usual warm and professional manner. The cafe was quieter now, and she had the chance to reflect on the small victories of the day, the ways she had maintained control over her own experience despite external pressures. She realized that true strength wasn't about confrontation or loud displays. It was about calm perseverance. It's about maintaining dignity even when others tried to diminish it, as she prepared to close the cafe for the night. She noticed the man in the corner finally rise and head toward the exit. For a moment, she wondered if she would ever see him again. But there was a sense of gratitude for the quiet encouragement he had provided. His presence had been a reminder that her efforts were seen, that her professionalism and character mattered in ways that were sometimes invisible to the casual observer. Locking the door behind him, she felt a mixture of relief and satisfaction. The day had been challenging, but she had endured with grace and strength. She thought about her dreams, the future she was working toward, and the quiet victories that made each day worthwhile. As she cleaned up the final counter, she felt a renewed sense of purpose, a reminder that even in the face of ridicule or doubt, maintaining dignity and focusing on one's own path was the most powerful response of all. The memory of the man in the corner lingered, a quiet affirmation that her hard work and character had not gone unnoticed, and that sometimes recognition came in ways far more meaningful than applause or laughter. The next day, she arrived at the cafe earlier than usual, the morning sun casting soft golden light on the streets outside. She felt a quiet sense of anticipation as she unlocked the door and stepped inside, ready to face another busy day. The cafe smelled of fresh coffee and baked goods, familiar and comforting. She moved quickly, setting up tables, restocking supplies, and preparing the counter for the rush. Despite the routine, her mind kept drifting back to the man who had observed her the previous day. Who was he? What had drawn his attention to her? The questions lingered, stirring curiosity along with a sense of intrigue. As she arranged cups and plates, she noticed the group of men from yesterday sitting at a table near the window, as if they had returned to see her again. Their confident strides and sharp attire immediately drew attention, and she could feel her heart sink for a moment. They had not forgotten their previous amusement, and their eyes scanned the cafe with a sense of entitlement. She reminded herself to stay composed, to continue her work with the same care and professionalism as before. It was a challenge, but she had learned that her dignity was hers to maintain, regardless of others' behavior. She approached their table with a menu in hand, keeping her smile steady. "Good morning, gentlemen. What would you like to start with today?" she asked politely, her voice calm despite the tension in the air. One of the men smirked, making a comment about her being back so early and looking even more tired than yesterday. The others chuckled, joining in with similar remarks. She felt the familiar sting of embarrassment, but refused to let it shake her focus. Instead, she repeated her order back carefully, ensuring every detail was correct, and moved on to fill their drinks. Her hands were steady, her movements precise, and she took a quiet pride in the fact that her professionalism remained intact. While preparing their drinks, she noticed movement in the corner of the cafe. The man from yesterday was there again, quietly observing the room, notebook in hand. His presence felt reassuring now, a silent support that she hadn't realized she needed. Unlike the group of men who sought to belittle her, this man seemed to notice the effort and care she put into her work. His eyes were calm but attentive, taking in the details without judgment or mockery. She allowed herself a small, fleeting smile, acknowledging him with a brief nod before returning to her tasks. The exchange felt human, real, and unexpectedly comforting. As the morning progressed, the cafe became busier, the flow of customers relentless. She moved through the tables with practiced ease, balancing trays, delivering orders, and refilling drinks. Despite the pressure, there was a rhythm to her work that allowed her to remain composed. She thought about the dream she held close to her heart, the small bakery she hoped to open one day. Every shift at the cafe was a step toward that dream, a way to practice patience, attention to detail, and resilience. Even the ridicule she faced was a lesson in strength, teaching her to maintain grace under pressure. At one point, she paused to help a young family who were having trouble with their order. The father seemed flustered, the children restless. She guided them with patience, making small talk and offering reassurances. The gratitude in their eyes reminded her of why she loved her work. Each act of kindness, each moment of human connection, mattered more than any criticism or mockery. She felt a quiet sense of satisfaction, knowing that her efforts made someone's day a little better, even if only in small ways. Meanwhile, the group of men continued to make snide remarks. But she began to notice their laughter carrying less weight. Her composure was no longer a source of amusement. It had become something that unsettled them slightly. They glanced around the cafe, perhaps realizing that their attempts to diminish her confidence were ineffective. She kept her focus on her work, aware of the subtle shift in power. It wasn't about winning or revenge. It was about maintaining dignity and proving to herself that she could rise above petty behavior. During a brief lull, the man in the corner approached her quietly. She was stacking cups behind the counter when he spoke, his voice calm and measured. "You handled yourself very well yesterday," he said. "I noticed how composed you were, even with that group making fun. It's not easy to stay so calm under pressure." She felt a mixture of surprise and curiosity. Who was he, and why did he care about her response to strangers' behavior? She paused, considering her words carefully, and replied politely, "Thank you. I've learned that professionalism matters more than their opinions. It's not easy, but it's worth it." He nodded. Seemingly satisfied with her response, he introduced himself, explaining that he owned several businesses in the city and often visited local cafes to observe operations and customer interactions. He had seen countless employees in his time, but something about her approach had stood out. He admired not just her efficiency, but her ability to maintain dignity and human warmth, even when faced with unkindness. The conversation was brief but meaningful, a recognition that felt genuine rather than superficial. She felt a flicker of excitement. Wondering what this connection might lead to, the group of men left shortly after, their laughter fading as they exited. She noticed a subtle change in the atmosphere of the cafe. Other customers seemed more relaxed, the staff more confident. She returned to her routine, taking orders, clearing tables, and engaging with customers. Her mind, however, lingered on the encounter with the businessman. He had noticed something in her that others had overlooked, and that recognition felt important. It was a reminder that effort and character were not invisible, that someone with insight could see beyond the surface. As the day wore on, she continued her work with renewed determination. She moved efficiently, delivering meals and drinks with care, interacting with customers warmly, and maintaining her composure under pressure. The small victories, the smiles of satisfied customers, the quiet nod of acknowledgement from colleagues, the subtle recognition from the man in the corner added up, reinforcing her belief in herself. She realized that every shift, every interaction, was an opportunity to practice patience, resilience, and professionalism. During a quiet moment, she took a break behind the counter. Sipping a cup of coffee and reflecting on the events of the day, she thought about the dreams she held, the bakery she hoped to open, and the future she was working toward. The recognition from the businessman gave her hope, not because she expected something immediate, but because it validated her approach to life and work. She understood that true opportunity often came from being noticed by those who understood the value of effort and character. The rest of the afternoon passed in a similar rhythm. She continued to serve customers with care, maintain order in the cafe, and engage in small, meaningful interactions. Each moment reinforced her belief that dignity, professionalism, kindness mattered more than the opinions of those who sought to belittle others. She moved with a quiet confidence, aware that her actions spoke louder than any mocking words or laughter. It was a lesson she carried with her, a reminder that strength was often silent and resilience understated. As the cafe began to slow for the evening, she noticed the businessman gathering his belongings. He approached her one last time before leaving, offering a small smile. "Keep doing what you're doing. It makes a difference," he said. She thanked him, feeling a sense of gratitude and inspiration. His acknowledgement was a subtle but powerful affirmation of her efforts, a reminder that true recognition came from those who understood character, not status or wealth. She continued her closing duties, organizing the cafe for the night, cleaning surfaces, and preparing for the next day. The memory of the businessman lingered, a quiet encouragement that stayed with her as she finished her work. She reflected on the events of the day, on the challenges she had faced, and on the small victories that had reinforced her sense of purpose. The laughter and mockery of the group of men no longer held power over her. Her focus was on growth, dignity, and the dreams she was determined to pursue as she locked the door and stepped outside. The evening air was cool and refreshing. The city buzzed softly around her, but she felt a sense of calm and satisfaction. She had faced challenges, maintained her composure, and been recognized in a meaningful way. It was a day that reminded her of the importance of character, the value of effort, and the quiet strength that comes from remaining true to oneself. She walked home with her head held high, carrying the lessons of the day and the encouragement of someone who had seen her for more than just a waitress. The future felt a little brighter, and her determination a little stronger. As she imagined the possibilities that lay ahead and the life she was working to build, a few days later, she was back at the cafe, the morning sun streaming through the windows and casting warm light on the tables. The routine felt familiar, comforting even, but today carried a quiet sense of anticipation. She had been thinking about the businessman ever since their last encounter, wondering why he had taken notice of her. His presence had left a lasting impression, a mixture of curiosity and hope that stirred in her chest. She reminded herself to stay focused on her work, but the thought of him lingered. A gentle motivation in the background, the cafe had begun to fill with the usual morning crowd, people chatting, sipping coffee, and reading newspapers. She moved efficiently among the tables, balancing trays, taking orders, and delivering meals with practiced skill. Every interaction mattered, every smile and gesture a part of her silent effort to make customers feel valued. She noticed small details that often went unseen, the way a child's eyes lit up at a colorful pastry, the relief on a parent's face when their coffee arrived just in time, the way a tired worker appreciated a quiet corner to sip their drink. These moments reminded her that her work was not just about serving food. It was about touching lives, even in small, unnoticed ways. As the rush began, she spotted the businessman entering the cafe. His steps were calm, confident, and he carried a small folder in his hands. Their eyes met, and he offered a brief, warm smile that made her heart lift slightly. She felt a mixture of nervousness and excitement. He walked over to her as she refilled a glass of water at a nearby table. "Good morning," he said gently, his voice carrying a tone of kindness and respect. "I was hoping we could talk for a few minutes, if you're not too busy." She glanced around the cafe, seeing the steady stream of customers and the staff moving efficiently, and nodded politely. "I'll be free in just a moment," she replied, keeping her tone calm. She finished her immediate tasks, cleared a few plates, and then led him to a quieter corner where they could speak without interruption. As they sat down, she felt a mix of curiosity and apprehension. What could he want? Was it related to her work, or something else entirely? He began by complimenting her on her professionalism and the way she handled difficult situations. He mentioned the group of men from earlier, noting how she had remained composed and dignified despite their mocking behavior. "It's rare to see someone stay so calm and kind under pressure," he said. "It shows a lot about your character." She felt a warm flush of pride, grateful that someone truly understood the effort she put into her work. She nodded, listening intently as he continued. Then he leaned forward slightly, his expression serious but encouraging. "I own several businesses in the city, and I often meet people with ideas and ambitions. I've noticed something in you that I think deserves attention. I want to offer you an opportunity to explore your potential beyond this cafe. Have you ever thought about starting your own business?" The words caught her off guard. She had dreamed of opening her own bakery, but the idea had always seemed distant, almost impossible given her current circumstances. Hearing him mention it now felt like a spark of hope she hadn't dared to expect. Her mind raced, thoughts tumbling over each other. "I have dreamed of opening a small bakery," she admitted, her voice soft but steady. "I've been saving money, planning, and writing down ideas, but it's been hard to know where to start. I never imagined someone like you would offer guidance or support." He nodded understandingly. "I believe in helping people with potential. You've shown qualities that are rare: resilience, professionalism, and a genuine care for others. I'd like to help you take the first steps toward turning your dream into reality." She felt a mixture of excitement, disbelief, and nervousness. The opportunity seemed almost surreal, but the sincerity in his eyes made it real. He explained that he could provide investment, guidance, and mentorship to help her develop her bakery, covering costs for equipment, ingredients, and initial setup. More importantly, he wanted to mentor her personally, sharing knowledge from his years of experience managing successful businesses. The thought of having someone so capable supporting her dream filled her with gratitude and determination. They spent the next hour discussing her ideas, her vision for the bakery, and the kind of environment she wanted to create. He asked detailed questions, listened carefully, and offered practical advice. She shared her sketches, her plans for pastries, and her notes about suppliers. Each time she spoke, he nodded thoughtfully, occasionally jotting down notes in his folder. The conversation felt natural, respectful, and deeply human. She felt seen, valued, and encouraged in a way she hadn't experienced before. By the end of the meeting, they had agreed on a plan to begin working together. He would provide initial funding, and she would focus on developing recipes, branding, and operational details. They set milestones for progress and discussed regular check-ins to ensure the project stayed on track. As they stood to leave, he offered a final word of encouragement. "Remember, the effort you put in now will shape your future. Stay true to your vision and your values, and success will follow." She thanked him sincerely, feeling a surge of determination. This was the moment she had been waiting for, a chance to turn dreams into reality. Over the next few days, she threw herself into preparations. Every spare moment outside her cafe shifts was spent researching, practicing recipes, and refining her business plan. She felt a renewed sense of purpose, a fire that had been dormant for years now, burning brightly. She found herself more confident, more motivated, and more focused. Even during challenging moments at the cafe, she carried the knowledge that someone believed in her, that she was taking real steps toward something significant. Her coworkers began to notice a change in her demeanor. She walked with a new confidence, spoke with greater clarity, and handled stressful situations with a calm assertiveness. It wasn't arrogance, but a quiet strength that inspired respect. Customers picked up on it too. Her interactions felt warmer, more genuine, more assured. The challenges of the cafe seemed smaller in comparison to the vision she now had for her future. She also began to realize that the small victories at the cafe, serving a smiling customer, Handling difficult situations gracefully were part of the preparation for her future bakery. Each shift was practice, each interaction a lesson in patience, management, and human connection. She began to see the cafe not just as a job, but as a training ground, a place where she could hone skills that would be invaluable when running her own business. One evening, after closing the cafe, she sat at her small kitchen table at home, notebook open and pen in hand, sketching ideas for pastries and layouts. She thought about the businessman's words, the trust he had placed in her, and the possibilities that lay ahead. It was overwhelming at times, the sheer scope of what needed to be done, but the excitement far outweighed the fear. She allowed herself to imagine the day when customers would walk into her bakery, smell the fresh bread, taste the pastries, had carefully crafted, and feel the warmth she had always wanted to share. The dream no longer seemed distant. It felt attainable, a step-by-step process that she was actively building. The journey was just beginning. But for the first time, she felt truly seen, recognized, and supported. The combination of her hard work, determination, and the guidance of someone who believed in her created a sense of possibility she had never experienced before. Each day, she woke with purpose. Each task a step toward a brighter, fuller future. The ridicule and mockery she had faced at the cafe faded in significance, overshadowed by the hope and opportunity now guiding her path. As she reflected on these developments, she felt gratitude, not just for the businessman's offer, but for the challenges she had endured. They had taught her resilience, patience, and the importance of maintaining dignity. They had prepared her for this moment, showing her that her efforts, no matter how small or unnoticed, had value. With each passing day, she grew more confident in her abilities and more determined to make her dream a reality. The future was unfolding before her, and she was ready to embrace it fully. One careful, purposeful step at a time. Months passed, and her dream of opening a bakery had finally become a reality. The small shop was filled with the rich scent of fresh bread, pastries, and coffee. Each corner of the bakery reflected her vision, the result of months of planning, hard work, and dedication. The shelves were stocked with her carefully crafted pastries. Colorful displays invited customers to explore, and the warm lighting created a welcoming atmosphere. She walked through the space with pride, feeling a sense of accomplishment that went beyond words. What had once been a dream scribbled in a notebook was now tangible, alive, and thriving. The first day of opening had been busy. With locals and passers-by curious to see the new bakery, she moved gracefully behind the counter, serving customers with the same care and attention she had shown at the cafe. Every smile, every compliment, and every satisfied customer reminded her of the journey she had taken.
The ridicule she had
faced in the past now seemed distant, a faint shadow that no longer held power over her. She realized that those moments had taught her resilience, patience, and dignity. Preparing her for this very day, the businessman who had mentored and supported her visited often, not just as an investor, but as someone genuinely interested in her success. He offered guidance, shared insights, and celebrated each milestone with her. His presence was a reminder that mentorship and belief in others could create life-changing opportunities. She valued his advice, but also trusted her instincts, balancing his experience with her own creativity and vision. Together, they made decisions that shaped the bakery into a place that reflected her personality, values, and commitment to excellence. As the bakery grew more popular, she noticed regular customers who returned day after day. They praised her pastries, admired the shop's layout, and appreciated the warmth and attentiveness she showed. It was a different kind of satisfaction from working at the cafe. Here, she could see the direct impact of her effort, creativity, and care. Each interaction reinforced the importance of maintaining human connection, of valuing each person who walked through the door, and of nurturing an environment where people felt welcome and appreciated. She also began hiring a small team to help manage the bakery, carefully selecting individuals who shared her passion and commitment. Training them was a challenge, but it was also rewarding. She drew on her experience at the cafe, teaching them not just the technical skills, but also the importance of professionalism, patience, and empathy. Watching her team grow, develop, and succeed brought her immense pride. It reminded her that success wasn't just about personal achievement. It was about lifting others and creating opportunities for growth and fulfillment. One afternoon, while she was arranging a display of freshly baked bread, she noticed a familiar figure entering the bakery. It was the group of men who had mocked her long ago at the cafe. Their confident strides faltered as they took in the sight of the bustling bakery, the line of satisfied customers, and her poised, confident demeanor behind the counter. She greeted them politely, as she always did with all customers, but the tables had turned. The laughter and mockery were gone, replaced by surprise and perhaps a touch of respect. They approached cautiously, and one of them finally spoke, commenting on how impressive the bakery was and how well she had done. She listened quietly, offering a polite smile, but there was no need for further acknowledgement. Her achievements spoke for themselves. The bakery was thriving, her team was successful, and she was living the dream she had once thought impossible. The incident reminded her that perseverance, dignity, and hard work could triumph over ridicule and doubt. She didn't need validation from those who had tried to belittle her. Her success was its own answer. The success of the bakery also allowed her to give back to her community. She organized small workshops for aspiring bakers, offering guidance, encouragement, and practical advice. She donated pastries to local shelters, participated in charity events, and used her platform to inspire others who were pursuing their dreams. Each act of kindness and support was a way to honor the journey she had taken and the lessons she had learned along the way. She realized that success was most meaningful when shared and used to uplift others. As the months turned into years, bakery continued to flourish. She introduced new recipes, expanded the menu, and even opened a small seating area where customers could enjoy their food and beverages in comfort. Her vision had grown, and she embraced the challenge of managing a growing business with determination and grace. The early struggles, the ridicule at the cafe, and the moments of doubt all became part of the foundation on which she built her success. Each challenge had shaped her, strengthened her, and prepared her for the responsibilities and joys of running her own business. She also maintained a strong connection with the businessmen who had mentored her. Their relationship had evolved from mentorship to friendship, rooted in mutual respect and shared experience. He continued to offer advice and encouragement, but she now made decisions with confidence and independence. The bond was a reminder that guidance and support could transform lives, but personal effort and determination were essential to seize opportunities and create lasting success. One evening, after closing the bakery, she stood outside. Looking at the warm lights glowing from the windows, the city was alive with activity, yet there was a sense of calm and fulfillment in the quiet moments. She reflected on the journey that had brought her here, the long hours at the cafe, the ridicule, the resilience she had cultivated, the mentorship she had received, and the unwavering commitment to her dreams. Each step, each challenge, and each triumph had shaped her into the person she had become. She thought about the people who had laughed at her, the moments of doubt, and the obstacles she had faced. None of them could diminish the journey she had taken or the success she had earned. Instead, those experiences had strengthened her, taught her patience and dignity, and reminded her that true success was built on perseverance, character, and care for others. She smiled quietly, feeling a deep sense of gratitude for both the hardships and the support that had guided her path. Looking around the bakery, she saw her team cleaning up, sharing a laugh, and preparing for the next day. She felt a profound sense of connection and pride. This was not just her success. It was a collective achievement, a reflection of shared effort, guidance, and dedication. She realized that her journey was a story of resilience, kindness, and the power of being true to oneself, even in the face of ridicule and doubt. The bakery was more than a business. It was a testament to her dreams, her perseverance, her unwavering commitment to her values. In the quiet moments, she often reflected on the man who had believed in her when she had needed it most. His recognition had been a turning point, a spark that ignited the journey from dreams to reality. Yet, she also knew that her own strength, determination, and resilience had carried her through the hardest days. The combination of support, opportunity, and personal effort had created the foundation for her success, and she honored each element with gratitude and humility. The bakery continued to grow, attracting new customers, inspiring aspiring bakers, and becoming a beloved part of the community. Each day brought new challenges and opportunities, but she faced them with confidence, patience, and a commitment to excellence. The lessons learned from her journey, the importance of dignity, perseverance, and care for others, remained central to her approach. She understood that true success was measured not just in financial terms, but in the impact one had on others and the fulfillment of one's own potential. As she closed the bakery one evening, locking the door and turning off the lights, she felt a sense of peace and accomplishment. The journey had been long and challenging, but it had led to something meaningful and enduring. She had transformed her dreams into reality, overcome ridicule, embraced opportunity, and built a life that reflected her values, vision, and perseverance. The bakery stood as a symbol of what could be achieved with resilience, dignity, and support, a place where her story could inspire others to believe in themselves and their dreams.